Loch Ness in Scotland, a place of secrets and legend. Hidden in the murky depths lies a mystery unsolved for 1,500 years. Is this the home of the Loch Ness Monster?
There's something in Loch Ness that shouldn't be there.
We go monster hunting on the latest sonar sweep of the loch, and the mystery thickens. Loch Ness locals tell us about their sightings of Nessie.
We were scared, really scared, because we just didn't know what it was.
Loch Ness, 24 miles long, 1 mile wide, and over 750 feet deep, famous for the world's best monster mystery. An incredible expanse of dark, forbidding water, countless investigators have tried to uncover its secrets on the quest for the Loch Ness Monster.
It appeared to me to be a whale-like object.
It was creating a huge wake, and it appeared to be moving very fast down the loch.
There have been glimpses of what might live hidden in this subterranean world. Is this evidence of a monster in the loch? At the beginning of the 21st century, even with new technology at hand, the mystery is bigger than ever. In the past, sonar searches have made contact with huge, inexplicable objects hidden deep in the loch. Local monster hunter Gordon Mingus has lived at the loch side for his entire life and has spent years involved in projects to track the monster down. Today, Mingus is undertaking a 10-hour sonar search at Urquhart Bay, where Nessie has been spotted in the past.
Today we'll go and do a sonar search, mainly of Urquhart Bay. We're using sonar as opposed to cameras because in the loch, one of the main problems is the maximum distance you can see is about 28 feet. If you were really going to discover the thing, hopefully it would be trying to catch its breakfast so we can come upon it when it's unawares.
Mingus has vital monster hunting equipment on board.
On the machine here, the top line is the surface. The boat is in the top right-hand corner. The thick red line at the bottom is the bottom. And anything that we get in between is something that's a mid-water target. And what we're looking for is something nice and big and red. GPS is also certainly a very useful tool. So if I pick up something, I can backtrack and go right over the same thing. And then you search the area in a bit more detail and you still can't find it, then you know it's big and it's moved. And that's where you've got to try and find something in there.
It's the start of a long day, but Mingus knows that every now and again his search will pay off.
Since I've been running this boat for the past 4 years, I've only picked up 2 targets, which have been sufficiently big to get me a little bit excited. So you can't afford not to be watching.
We'll be returning to the sonar search at the end of the day to see if Mingus has any new evidence of the monster's existence. For aspiring monster hunters, the Clansman Hotel offers a view over Loch Ness, but its owner, Catherine Handley, prefers to keep a safe distance from the loch. Handley's experience of the monster 3 years ago is one that she would rather not repeat.
It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. We're just walking across the car park to the flat where we stay, when suddenly there was a huge splashing about sound coming from the marina. It was very alarming because it was so huge, it seemed to be stirring up the loch. So it was very scary in that I just immediately couldn't explain away this huge noise. It was like something very, very big had been trapped somehow in the marina, had got in here and somehow couldn't get back out and was flailing about. Instinctively, not knowing what it was, and the fact that we were all alone, we just ran to the flat, ran in there, got inside, closed the door and stood there in the hallway panting. We were scared, really scared. We didn't hear the noise again from the marina And so we were wondering, had it in fact come out of the water, and could it now be in the car park, whatever it was?
Although Handley was curious, she was too frightened to go and investigate that night.
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, the noise was so huge, the splashing about so great, that when I came down the next morning, I was still fearful, and I really expected to see something. I had no idea what, but something that could help me explain away this bizarre noise. There was nothing.
Nessie seems to appear quite by chance. People have seen her when they are least expecting to. Christina McIntosh Palmer had grown up by the loch and had never seen anything to make her believe that the mystery could be true. All that changed in June 1998.
It was my husband's birthday, and we'd hired this very boat, and we had a disco on board and a party. My sister was down here, and I came from the top deck down to talk to her, when suddenly looked out and saw this thing come up in the water, and we looked at each other. We got quite a fright, really. You know how a whale comes up slowly? It wasn't quick, it was lumbering. It was definitely something big, and the biggest part was under the water. I looked around quickly to see who had the camcorder. My brother-in-law had it. He was up on the top, and he turned round, and I just asked him to film it. And as he was filming it, it just brought the surface again. But we didn't know that until the next day when we looked at that he had actually got anything, until we looked at the film.
Once a skeptic, now a believer. The sighting has transformed Mrs. McIntosh Palmer's opinion about the monster in Loch Ness.
I was skeptical myself. I didn't believe that there was anything, out of the ordinary in Loch Ness. But I can assure anybody that is skeptical, there is definitely something there. I saw it. I know what I saw. They can send men to the moon. Why can't they find out what's floating around in Loch Ness?
There's no easy answer to Mrs. Palmer's question. The mystery of Loch Ness will continue for years to come. When we return, we go back in time to when the mystery began.
St. Columba blesses the monster and sends it back down to the bottom for time evermore.
The monster of Loch Ness is not a modern mystery. In fact, it is rooted in the past. Anyone who seeks to find an answer has to look back 1,500 years to the very first reported sighting.
According to legend, St. Columba in 565 AD was travelling into the Highlands of Scotland. He came up the River Ness, whereupon he saw a group of people struggling with a man, and they explained that this man had been attacked by a monster which had come out of the water and attacked a swimmer. A big fiery dragon-type monster rises from the depths of the water, whereupon St. Columba blesses the monster and sends it back down to the bottom for time evermore.
Sightings continued into the 17th and 18th centuries as the monster became part of local folklore, but it started making headlines in 1933.
In March 1933, a London couple were travelling from doors to foyers, and they saw a huge creature disporting itself.
The wife of the couple was Aldie Mackay. It was her account that detonated the media explosion of interest in the Loch Ness monster.
It just rose out of the water, black, wet, with the water rolling off it. And I yelled at my husband, "Stop the beast."
And from there on, the monster myth and legend was created.
The 30s was the decade of photographic proof. A number of pictures were published, but they weren't quite what they seemed. The celebrated Lachlan Stewart photo is now known to be 3 hay bales covered in tarpaulin. The Hugh Gray photo shows little more than a wake or a wave. But the most intriguing picture of them all is the surgeon's photo. Taken in 1934, it was believed to be proof of the monster, but in recent years, there have been several different claims that the picture is a hoax. The 40s and 50s were quiet years for the monster, but then came the 60s.
Initially, it started with Tim Dinsdale, who mounted a one-man expedition to the loch. On the 23rd of May, having been up there for a few days, he actually captured something on film, and he believed what he'd captured on film was in fact the back of the Loch Ness monster.
The Dinsdale film shows a wake in the loch, unlike the disturbance caused by a boat. It inspired a frenzy of monster hunting. The Loch Ness Investigation Bureau was formed in 1962, but it closed in '72 with no conclusive proof. In the 80s, a much larger project was underway. Operation Deep Scan in '87 boasted a flotilla of 25 boats scanning the entire length and breadth of the loch with sonar. But despite the scale of the operation, once again, little was found to prove the monster's existence. So what has happened to keep the mystery alive?
Local people still see something in the loch. Visitors still report sightings of strange humps. Fishermen passing through the loch still see curious wakes. It will continue that way until something is actually pulled from the loch and produces evidence as being the Loch Ness monster.
It seems that the history of Loch Ness provides more questions than it does answers. Will evidence ever reveal the identity of a creature in the loch? Investigators have given up years of their lives in search of proof of a beast living in the loch. Scientists have worked side by side with self-styled monster hunters, but no one has been able to solve the mystery. Dick Rayner started looking for Nessie in 1967. Amazingly, after just 10 days of surveillance, Rayner shot some footage that was widely believed to be of the monster in action.
I was manning a camera vehicle opposite the village of Dawes, and about 11:45, I saw this silver line on the black water coming out from the bay, and I couldn't really believe it. This was what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be filming this thing, so I quickly checked the light meter and switched on the camera. And through the binoculars, I could see that this thing had a small object sticking up at the front, and it kind of went in spurts and stopped, and then set off again, and then stopped. A large pleasure steamer came halfway between me and it, and I thought, well, will anyone on the boat have seen this? It could be important, but nobody had. 14 years later, in 1981, I was working back on Loch Ness again. I was looking out of the caravan window and saw a line moving along the surface. My heart leapt. It was going in spurts and then stopping, and then going off in spurts and stopping again. And I realised that this was what I'd seen before, and by looking again more clearly, I could see that it was a group of birds called mergansers, and the mother bird runs along the surface, kicking up the spray, and then sits down and waits for the chicks to catch up with her. And it seems that that's probably what I filmed all those years earlier. It came as a bit of disappointment to see that.
But Rayner wasn't disillusioned and remained determined to find the monster. Today, he is one of the few investigators still working on the loch. His latest research project began in 1999, a portable trailing underwater camera.
When I first came here, I really did think that there was a family of large 50-foot-long monsters living in the lake. I'm not sure anymore. Whatever there is in Loch Ness will be under the surface. And I suppose with the underwater television camera, you've got a chance. It's like having a lottery ticket. There's no way you can win a lottery unless you have a ticket. And the only way you're going to find anything under the surface of the loch is by putting a camera down and having a look. Well, this is a very interesting area. It's where we're seeing the eels behaving in slightly strange ways. We've seen them standing on their tails, apparently, as we approach them. It has been suggested in the past that perhaps eels which are expected to go back to the Sargasso Sea actually stay in Loch Ness and grow to a great age. And that has been proposed as one of the ideas, one of the possible solutions to the monster story. So anything we can find out about this will be of interest.
With his footage of the eels in the can, Rayner heads for a second location. There's still time for one last search.
Lights on. Lights on, good. I think something just shot along the bottom there, leaving a cloud of silt behind it. What's the time on the video, John? Is there a time display? It's just as we were heading back towards the harbour, there was something that just left a little furrow of disturbed mud along the bottom. I didn't see what it was at all. I just saw the sort of cloud of mud that it left behind. So we'll replay the video when we get back and have a look at that, see what it was. It's like a successful hunting trip. We've had a good time, we've enjoyed ourselves, we've seen interesting things on the bottom.
A good day's hunting for Rayner, but closer inspection of the footage doesn't reveal the identity of the creature that swam quickly across the screen. Just another mystery to be solved in Loch Ness. So what could be the answer to the world's best monster mystery? Monster hunters will be intrigued by Rayner's discovery of eels behaving strangely.
There is no reason why an eel in Loch Ness couldn't grow to 15, 20 feet. We know that these exist at sea, so there's no reason why they couldn't exist in Loch Ness.
But there are other theories. Some still believe that the monster is a plesiosaur, a throwback from the Jurassic era. But science deems this an impossibility. The water in Loch Ness is 4 degrees Celsius, too cold for a dinosaur to exist. Others believe the monster is a fish that can grow to gigantic proportions.
There is one fish, very reptilian in appearance, but it's actually the biggest fish you'll ever see in fresh water. And that's the Atlantic sturgeon, which has been known to make occasional visits to British freshwaters. We're not saying that sturgeon live in Loch Ness, they certainly don't. But it is conceivable that individuals might have come in.
But a sturgeon can't account for all the sightings of a single hump. The theories continue, but there is still no answer. The monster remains an enigma. When we return, has this recent footage captured the monster on film? In Scotland, Britain's largest inland lake, Loch Ness, is home to a frightening yet fascinating mystery. Over 750 million cubic meters of murky water could hide the Loch Ness monster. Thousands claim to have seen the monster, and yet there is little concrete evidence of its existence. But it isn't just the professionals that could finally solve the mystery. Anyone could spot her aboard a cruise on the Nessie Hunter.
I think most people come with an expectation of seeing something in the water, but when we're out there and I tell them about the loch and I tell them all the different things about what I've seen and what's possible and what's not possible, people go away, whether they come here as total skeptics, they go away with that little bit of doubt in their mind there.
I don't know if it's a mystery thing or it's just because the lake is very deep. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see.
I'm sure the captain knows where the animal sleeps at night and he's ready to go.
It's just under 23 miles long.
The skipper of the Nessie Hunter, George Edwards, knows the loch better than most. Amazingly, Edwards claims to have discovered the deepest part of the loch back in 1988 on a Coast Guard's exercise.
I just happened to glance up at the sonar screen and lo and behold, I recorded a depth of around about 800 feet. So I began to first of all sort of increase my circles, then decrease them. And eventually I recorded a depth of 812 feet, which had never been recorded before. I didn't think much about it at all at the time, and it was only after I told a friend of mine about my discovery that he said to me that it was probably the most important discovery ever made at Loch Ness.
Strangely, this deep hole in the bottom of the loch cannot always be detected on the sonar, and some have called it Nessie's lair. Meanwhile, Edwards tells today's Nessie hunters about the other mysteries of the loch.
There is no doubt at all that there are some strange creatures here in Loch Ness. You see, the first recorded sighting was made by St. Columba back in 565 AD, and these creatures have been seen consistently ever since. All these people cannot be telling lies, they can't all be imagining things.
So, are the Nessie hunters having any luck?
Not this time, perhaps next time. We did see something on Sonar, which was quite remarkable.
You think that you might just happen to glance across the water and it'll be there?
And I would imagine there's got to be more than one.
I think there's no doubt that there's creatures down there that are unidentified.
I think that's the main purpose why lots of people come here, you know, to go to Loch Ness and hopefully catch a glimpse of one of the creatures, go on a Nessie hunt. And you never know, one of these days we might just find something.
Not lucky, maybe next time.
No Nessie, maybe next time. We'll have to come back.
There have been no sightings today, but on a monster hunt, you never know when you might see Nessie. So always keep a camera at hand. Loch Ness is a mecca for tourists from every corner of the world. Visitors flock here from as far as Japan, America, and Australia. Every year, they contribute $37 million to Scotland's tourist industry. Last year, over 400,000 visitors were hoping for a glimpse of the elusive monster. On the spot all year round, hotel owners are often in prime positions overlooking the loch. At the Craig Derrick Hotel, Mr. and Mrs. Monroe are sure that the mystery surrounding Loch Ness is real. In June 1996, they and 23 other witnesses saw inexplicable movements in the loch.
In June '96, I went out for the evening walk with the dogs and my daughter-in-law, and we looked out to the loch as we do, and there was a white disturbance, a wash, which caught our eye, and I asked her if she could decide what it was, and we couldn't see, so we came inside to get somebody else, and of course all the guests went out as well.
Well, I was in the bar as usual, serving people with their drams, etc. And Kate came in and said that she had seen a disturbance in the water. So I went outside, had a look at this, and really couldn't decide what I was seeing. Everybody congregated in this area of the car park, because this is obviously where you get the best view over the loch. It literally looked like somebody playing on a jet ski and just zigzagging the thing about. But I mean, there was no jet ski there. There was nothing at the front. And we all stood here for 15, 20 minutes watching this thing in the water. I really, to this day, don't know what we saw, but I'm totally and utterly convinced that it was a living creature of some description.
Unable to believe his eyes, David Monroe headed to get his telescope.
Even with the telescope I have, which I can clearly see the craters on the moon with it, so I mean it's a very powerful telescope, even with that, you really couldn't tell what was causing the wash.
But is it possible that hoteliers like the Monroes and Catherine Hanley only see the monster because it's good for business?
I'm conscious that I'm a hotelier here. It was the beginning of the season, and I know that there's cynics out there that might say that we're just trying to get something going, you know, to drum up business or something.
People do say, you know, is the Loch Ness Monster all about tourism? And yes, one has to be honest and say that people do come to see the Loch Ness Monster, but it's not there for tourism. I mean, I personally saw the creature when I was about 10 or 12 years old. I'm now late 50s. I completely believe in it. Have seen on a couple of occasions things which I can't explain. It is a genuine fact. There is something in the loch.
Whether Nessie is good for business or not, the locals are sure that Loch Ness still hides a mystery that is yet to be solved. Tourist Jeff Mitchison believed that he had the answer to the mystery when he went on a Nessie hunt on a cruise boat in 1998.
Before I came up the loch, I didn't really believe in the Loch Ness Monster, no disbelieving it. It was a mystery that I was interested in, and When we went on the boat, I was just like glancing out the window, just holding the camera in my hand, and noticed something swimming in the water. When I actually started zooming in on it, I didn't really think anything. It just looked like a rock in the water. When you see a rock in the stream and the water passing it, it just looked like that. And then when it disappeared into the water, I thought, well, rock doesn't do that. So I like jumped up, went on the outside of the boat and tried to zoom in on it again, but it had disappeared by then. It was gone, but I did get a shock when it disappeared into the water. When I put it on the television, you can actually see an eye in the side of its head. It looks like a large dark eye there. I got friends to have a look at it, and they said it doesn't look like a seal, it doesn't look like somebody swimming in the water. It's just hard to comprehend that it actually could be something that, you know, people's been looking for hundreds of years, I think, really.
The mystery is not that easy to solve. Some naturalists and monster hunters have claimed that the animal captured on film is in fact a seal.
The Mitchison video was actually taken from the Nessie hunter boat at the other side of the bay here, and instantly became the best piece of evidence yet for the Loch Ness Monster. Basically, it's a seal.
He's convinced that what he saw was one of these creatures in the water. Unfortunately, all the killjoys came along and said, oh no, what you've seen is a common seal or a grey seal in the water, and it wasn't one of these creatures.
When you rewind the tape a couple of times and you have a look, you can actually see the head moving side to side. It's actually turning its head and looking about, and it looks like it's interested in what's happening. Whereas a seal, it's just, they look happy-go-lucky and they're just bobbing up and down, and a seal doesn't sink, it dives forward. So you see its tail, you see the back of its body actually submerging under the water. But this didn't, it just sank back slowly. And a seal, I don't think a seal is capable of sinking back like that. Having said that, I'm not a professional.
With the Loch Ness Monster, there can never be a straightforward answer. For Mitchison, the identity of the creature he filmed is still unknown. When we return, we meet the man who swam with Nessie.
I had recurring dreams where I didn't get back to the surface again and sort of wakened up with a start in the middle of the night.
Loch Ness still has many monster hunters, each with their own methods of tracking the elusive beast down. Some use sophisticated sonar equipment, others use underwater cameras, others simply watch and wait. Richard Carter has been fascinated by the mystery of Loch Ness for 10 years. It's become his ultimate goal to find out the truth, so he's begun to question historical evidence that already exists.
Well, in 1977, Peter and Gwen Smith from this shore here saw a pole-like object. I think the periscope-like object they describe it as, and filmed it in 8mm film. And basically all you see is a round object rise out of the loch and fall 3 times.
Carter tries to recreate classic evidence like the Smith film in order to find out if it really is the monster, or if there could be another explanation.
It's the most important thing to use the same type of camera, if possible be in the same place, and just recreate it exactly as it was on that day. The stone will just sink to the bottom with the pole attached, and then you'll manipulate the pole from the shore, which will hopefully make it go up and down and look like Nessie's neck. The main thing against the Smith film actually being an hoax on the Smiths was that most people said it was so difficult to set something like this up, but obviously it isn't. It's so basically simple. It's nothing.
Okay, over the side.
And obviously people haven't tried it. That's the only thing I can think. A piece of wood, an old stone, a piece of rope, and that's it. And this is the 8mm cine camera that we're going to refilm it with and see what kind of results we get. Now we're just getting somewhere near the right distance now, which is, say, about 100 feet further down the shore from the object, so we can film it, which again is similar to what the distance that the Smiths filmed it from. Dick's manipulating the rope, making the post rise to the surface and sink again, which looks very similar to what the Smiths filmed. Yeah, I think we can safely say that's another one that bites the dust.
However, not all monster hunters are convinced that this proves the Smith film wasn't evidence of the monster in the loch.
Yeah, you can make a stick behave much like, because you can't really see in her piece of film what it is that's sticking out there. It's so moving about anyway. You can make a stick behave like that, but it doesn't mean that the original thing was a stick.
If we get rid of the evidence that's no good, that can be proved to be no good, we can start looking at other things that will maybe lead us in the right direction to finding out what is actually in here.
So what keeps Carter believing in the monster mystery?
A local that's lived here for 20 years and seen nothing, and then seen something that he can't describe or she can't describe, they've seen something different. Not something that happens on a 20-year cycle. They've seen something in Loch Ness that should not be there, whether it be a plesiosaur, a sturgeon, a catfish, a giant eel, or something we don't know. There's something in Loch Ness that shouldn't be there, and that's what the mystery is all about.
Carter will carry on trying to eliminate historical evidence that he doesn't believe in, but he would still love to have proof of a creature living in Loch Ness. For one man, all the years of research into the Loch Ness monster are meaningless. He knows that the monster exists. When Robert Badger was a young man, he joined the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau and joined in with the attempts to find the elusive monster. But one fateful day, Robert was to have an experience that even he hadn't dreamt of.
In August 1971, the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau had obtained a new workboat called Narwhal, and we brought it up here to Urquhart Bay and needed to put a mooring down for it. And I had some diving experience, so we put it down and swimming straight out from here, sort of halfway between surface and bottom, I got to the edge of the dip where the bottom dives to the bottom of the loch. Out of the gloom in front of me appeared a solid object, and I could see a top and a bottom. It was rounded towards me, cylindrical in shape. It was a rough skin texture. I only observed it for a second or two, knew what it had to be.
Badger believed the creature to be flesh-eating, and these thoughts panicked him.
These kind of things flashed through my mind fairly quickly in those 2 seconds, and I decided I would get to the surface pretty quickly and head back in. And in fact, I had recurring dreams for some time after that where I didn't get back to the surface again. The following year, they put down a camera and a strobe camera and a sonar in roughly the same topography on the other side of the bay here, and when something moved in, this was the picture that they got at that time. Now they picked up this flipper and this side part. This was the part that I saw, and this was exactly the kind of texture of skin that I had reported, and shape and so on. Unfortunately, I didn't see any flipper area.
Coming face to face with a monster was a scary experience. But it's eyewitness accounts like Badger's that keep the Loch Ness mystery alive. There is one image that for 60 years was synonymous with the Loch Ness monster. Taken in 1934, this photograph seemed to prove the existence of a beast lurking in the loch. It was called the surgeon's photo, after Dr. R.K. Wilson, a gynecologist who claimed to have taken the picture. But for one man, the image didn't quite ring true.
The thing about the surgeon's photo is it always seemed to me, just from looking at it, that what some of the Nessie authors had interpreted as waves were actually ripples. Just looking at the photograph, I just thought, well, this is something that isn't more than a foot high. While I was doing the work on the surgeon's photo, I realised that it would be beneficial to actually have a kind of replica version. But you can see when it goes through the water, you've got that instant kind of ambiguity as to the scale. Same as you get with a surgeon's photo, where you're suddenly reading that as, oh, is that a few feet high or is it a few inches high? When it comes closer into the shore, you can see the rocks, and you suddenly get that frame of reference and you think, oh no, it's a small object.
With his beliefs confirmed, Boyd and co-investigator Dave Martin soon had the other pieces of the elaborate hoax.
Marmaduke Wetherell was an actor and film director who had been employed by the Daily Mail to head what they termed a special mission of inquiry at the end of 1933.
But Weatherall claimed an outrageous finding of a footprint on the shore of Loch Ness. Publicly embarrassed, the Mail pulled the plug on the expedition. Marmaduke Weatherall wasn't happy.
Weatherall and his son went back up to the loch with a model which Weatherall had asked Ian and his stepson, Christian Spurling, to make for him.
Boyd tracked down Spurling and taped a confession from him of how he built a head and neck model on a plastic toy submarine. The stage was set for the surgeon's photo.
They take the photographs on a 35mm camera, a Leica.
The undeveloped film is given to a friend of a friend, and this is the surgeon, R.K. Wilson.
The pictures get given to Wilson with instructions, obviously, to take them to the Daily Mail.
When Boyd uncovered this hoax, it seemed to believers that he was out to trash the best monster mystery in the world. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth.
I had a sighting back in 1979, which was convincing. And I think it's only because I am convinced that I'm willing to spend time on exposing the hoaxes.
For Boyd, the past 21 years of watching the loch have shed no more light onto the mystery. It's still as murky as ever. When we return, the experts analyze mysterious new footage.
You'll notice also that the object itself has got a trail either side of it.
Monster hunter Gordon Mingus is determined to uncover the truth. He believes there's a monster in Loch Ness and he wants to prove it, but the odds are stacked against him. Mingus is using sonar attached to the bottom of his boat to scan the loch for evidence of an unusually large creature. He's been sweeping Urquhart Bay for the last 5 hours.
One of the big problems with Loch Ness is the fact that the loch is 23.7 miles long, it's an average of a mile wide, and it's 750 feet deep. We are, at the moment, searching Urquhart Bay. It's only a very small sample of Loch Ness, but we have to start somewhere. Also, if you look at the sides of the loch, there's plenty nooks and crannies for anything in here. If it doesn't like it, it just goes in and tucks into one of these and you won't see it anyway.
On occasion, Mingus's search gets a result. He's recorded a contact with an unusually large target directly beneath his boat.
It is very large. There's no actual immediate thing to compare with, but these are fish contacts, the ones over here, so you can get an idea of relative size. Unfortunately, I couldn't go back over it because I was being followed by the other two cruise boats too closely. But the interesting thing was, although they covered the same line, they picked up nothing. So there was immediate verification that the thing had moved.
So is this now scientific proof of the monster's existence? Mingus hopes that one day sonar will give him a definitive answer.
It keeps you going. It keeps you, and it makes you maybe even intensify the search.
Another important day for Mingus in the search for Nessie. And he'll be out again tomorrow, searching for another sonar contact to solve the mystery of Loch Ness. "35 years ago, there was one truly remarkable sighting. It lasted for over 50 minutes, and the man who witnessed it was trained to solve mysteries. Ian Cameron is now a retired CID Special Branch police officer.
Well, on the 15th of June 1965, I, along with a friend, William Fraser, a civil engineer, was on this very spot, fishing for brown trout. Just over there in Urquhart Bay, I saw something that broke the surface and caught my eye. I would say it appeared to me to be a whale-like object, say 30 feet across the surface of the loch and about a metre high.
Over the next 50 minutes, the monster drifted closer and closer to the shore where Cameron stood watching.
and it turned. It cut into wind and it cruised just right back out, going out to midwater. And at the end of about 50 minutes of the sighting, it submerged and finally went out of sight.
Although Cameron is still a fisherman, the experience has left him more wary of the loch. Today, there's no way that Cameron will go out in a small rowing boat.
For the very simple reason that if this thing, object, call it what you may be, if it surfaced alongside, I wouldn't want to know what to do. It's not like anything else I've ever seen alive on this planet.
For ex-police detective Cameron, the mystery of Loch Ness is one that he is unable to solve and remains an enigma even today. One man who is still waiting for a glimpse of the creature is Steve Feltham. Since the age of 7, Steve had a schoolboy obsession with the mystery of the monster of Loch Ness. His school holidays would be spent watching and waiting.
At that time, there was a big expedition along just beyond Urquhart Castle. And as a 7-year-old kid, you see these characters with this big platform that they had with this camera with a lens on it. The lens must have been about 3 foot long. And I was just hooked on it just at that point. And it became a passion that as soon as I got back to Dorset, I started reading books from the library about it and arguing with classmates about it. And became more and more positive that there was a great mystery here.
Steve kept his passion for Nessie alive during adulthood, and in 1991 made a startling decision.
Eventually I thought, hang on, I'm going back to the rat race to earn the money to pay the mortgage, to get back up here to do the things I love doing. If I just sell the house, I can then quit the job, use the profit from the house to set myself up with a van and a video camera, and then see what becomes of a full-time monster hunter.
For 9 years, Steve has lived in his trailer by the side of the loch. He scrapes a living making models of the monster, but he is no closer to solving the mystery.
I didn't ever expect that 9 years down the road, I'd still be waiting for my first good look at a creature in the loch. But so many times I'm hearing of other people's experiences, things they've seen, whether they're describing to me things they saw when they were a child or things they saw last week, that they wouldn't tell to an outsider. I just know that one day the odds will fall right, that I'll be in the right place at the right time.
For Steve, the truth remains out of reach, but he is as convinced as ever that Loch Ness holds a monster in its depths. From as early as the 1960s, there have been attempts by expert analysts to look at footage that was claimed to be of the monster. It was analyzed by a military unit called JERIC, the Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Center, at the heart of Britain's Royal Air Force. Ex-JERIC officer David Oxley was one of the highly trained analysts that looked at the monster footage.
One of the reasons why JERIC was chosen was because of the level and high standard of training for the people that do the image analysis. And this involves something like 16 weeks of quite concentrated training. And so at the end of the day, one could say that the person that's looking at the imagery who's been trained is looking with a trained eyeball.
So what about the recent amateur footage shot by Mrs. McIntosh Palmer in 1998? She claimed to have seen a huge hump in the water, but only managed to catch the creature on film as it broke the surface and swam away. We asked Oxley for his professional opinion.
What I did with this was to take it into a digital form, to use a digital image to produce a stereo pair, and looked at a stereo image, and there I was able to see the texture of the object, and that texture, the best I can do perhaps for Miss McIntosh Palmer was to say, you could say it looked a bit like a crocodile, but I think in fact it was the bark of a log.
Does this call into question whether Mrs. McIntosh Palmer actually saw the monster in the loch?
The difficulty is this: I don't know what the Loch Ness Monster looks like. Maybe the Loch Ness Monster looks like a log being towed, for all I know. So it's very difficult for me to say, yes, I can say it is, or no, I can't say it isn't. All I can do is describe what I see using a pair of obviously trained eyes and using the equipment that we've talked about. So it might be or it might not be, and that's as far as I can go.
But perhaps improved technology will one day solve the mystery of Loch Ness.
If we get some good imagery, then we can probably come up with a more definitive answer than we've done in the past. But I would not say that the imagery alone, imagery analysis alone, will tell you yes or no there's something in that loch.
Even highly trained professionals and high-tech equipment can't bring an end to this spooky story. The mystery of the Loch Ness Monster grows bigger day by day.
It is the greatest mystery in the world.
It is a genuine fact. There is something in the loch.
I would never swim in that loch, no, no way.
This mystery has so much totally changed my life.
At the end of the day, without question, I saw it.
Hundreds of years have passed since the first reported sighting of Nessie, yet the mystery endures today. But now you could solve the secrets of Loch Ness. These cameras scan the loch 24 hours a day, and the pictures are broadcast live on the web. If you're watching, you never know what you might see.